Judge Prescott's overreach, and Elon Musk's quiet defiance. The early morning light filtered through the courthouse windows in Fresno, California, as rain tapped gently against the glass. Inside courtroom 7B of the federal courthouse, a scene of routine legal proceedings was unfolding. The clerk shuffled papers, reporters adjusted their cameras, and the air was filled with a low murmur of hushed conversations and the occasional clink of coffee cups. Today, however, the proceedings would take an unexpected turn. Elon Musk entered the courtroom alone. No security detail, no entourage, just the billionaire in a tailored gray suit and dark tie, his face revealing nothing of the storm brewing. Musk was there as a defendant, facing allegations that, on paper, seemed straightforward. He had previously disclosed sealed details from a corporate litigation hearing during a public event, violating court protocol. The fine imposed on him was a staggering $3.2 million, a figure the judge expected him to pay without fuss. Presiding over the case was Judge Alan Prescott, known for his steely demeanor and uncompromising enforcement of courtroom rules. As the judge scanned the room, his eyes fixated not on Musk, but on an unexpected detail. At the defense table sat Pam Bondi, whose presence was as commanding as ever. Dressed in a crisp suit with a simple gold cross pinned to her lapel, a symbol of her personal faith, she had always been known to stand her ground. Today, however, that cross would become the fulcrum of a contentious confrontation. Before proceedings could delve into the corporate dispute against Musk, a battle with allegations of fraudulent practices and unethical corporate maneuvers, the judge's gaze fell on Bondi. With a measured yet sharp tone, Judge Prescott cleared his throat. "Ms. Bondi, I must remind you that personal religious symbols have no place in this courtroom. I request that you remove your cross immediately, or I will impose a fine." A ripple of murmurs swept through the courtroom. The judge's directive seemed aimed more at asserting his authority than maintaining order. Pam Bondi, however, remained unruffled. Standing tall, she responded calmly, "Your Honor, I respectfully disagree. My cross is no more disruptive than a wedding ring or any other personal accessory. It is a symbol of my faith and is fully protected by the First Amendment." Judge Prescott's face darkened as he banged his gavel. "Then, Ms. Bondi, you leave me no choice. You are fined $500 for violating courtroom neutrality." His words, delivered in a tone of finality, echoed across the room. The fine was unexpected, a penalty not for any overt misconduct, but simply for displaying a personal symbol. Yet Bondi's reaction was equally unexpected. She did not remove the cross. Instead, she folded her hands over her briefcase, her eyes steady as she prepared to challenge the ruling. Before Judge Prescott could resume, Bondi addressed the court with deliberate precision. "Your Honor, before we proceed further, I must formally object and record that my cross, as a matter of constitutional right, is protected. The law does not require me to hide my personal faith simply to satisfy subjective standards of neutrality." For a moment, silence reigned as Judge Prescott's stern gaze bore into her. Then, the courtroom's atmosphere shifted subtly. Even the reporters leaned in as Bondi continued, "I will file an appeal regarding this fine. I stand by my right to express my faith without it being construed as a disruption to these proceedings." Meanwhile, Elon Musk observed the exchange from his seat, his eyes betraying only a hint of curiosity behind his impassive mask. His lead attorney, Russell Greer, exchanged a brief, knowing look with Musk, both aware that while the fine might have seemed a routine enforcement of courtroom decorum, it was already setting the stage for something far more significant. As the trial proceeded, the courtroom was soon filled with testimony regarding the case against Musk. Allegations that he had breached court protocol by revealing sealed details during a press event related to one of his companies. Witnesses were called one after the other. Special Agent Daniel Briggs testified about a raid where a suspect, armed only with a Know Your Rights pamphlet, had legally refused entry into his home due to the absence of a judicial warrant. Briggs's calm admission that the warrant was not present underscored a critical point. Exercising constitutional rights was not a criminal offense. Officer Daniel Reynolds recounted how protesters had formed a human blockade outside an apartment, reciting similar rights during a raid, causing the operation to fail. Every time the prosecution painted these incidents as obstruction, John Vance, now revealed as Musk's defense attorney, stepped in, arguing that these actions were fully within legal rights and not acts of defiance. Throughout the day, the testimony built a layered narrative. Former Titan Digital Compliance Officer Sarah Levine testified about internal emails discussing how executives adjusted policies to sidestep regulatory scrutiny. A cybersecurity analyst detailed how Titan Digital's algorithms, while designed to favor the company's own products, were not uniquely illegal, as similar practices existed across the industry. The defense maintained that, even if Musk's competitors found these actions distasteful, they remained within the boundaries of the law. The tension in the courtroom escalated when the prosecution called Titan Digital CEO Robert Landry to the stand. Landry insisted that his company had always operated within legal limits. Yet his nervous pauses when questioned about internal warnings hinted at inconsistencies in his story. Then came the moment that would change the course of the trial entirely. John Vance reached into his briefcase and produced a small folder. With a calm, steady motion, he handed it to the court clerk, who delivered it to Judge Prescott. As the judge flipped through the documents, his expression transformed from stern authority to stunned disbelief. The folder contained official records verifying that the defense attorney was, in fact, the sitting vice president of the United States. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Reporters, jurors, and even prosecutor Linda Pruitt were momentarily silenced by the revelation. Judge Prescott's voice trembled as he finally spoke. "Vice President, you should have disclosed your identity at the outset. For procedural misconduct, I hereby fine you." The vice president accepted the fine with a composed nod. "I accept the fine, as it is my legal right," he stated, his tone calm and measured, leaving the courtroom in a state of utter astonishment. What followed was a deep, measured debate on the boundaries of legal interpretation versus ethical accountability. John Vance argued forcefully that if a company or an individual operates strictly within the legally disclosed framework, even if they exploit every loophole, they should not be penalized as criminals. Unethical behavior is a matter for regulatory reform, not criminal prosecution, he asserted, challenging the jury to consider whether the fine itself was a misuse of judicial discretion. After hours of heated cross-examinations and impassioned closing arguments, Judge Prescott dismissed the jury for deliberation. The room was thick with anticipation as every attendee sensed that this trial had evolved from a corporate litigation case into a landmark debate over judicial authority and constitutional rights. When the jury finally returned with a verdict of not guilty on charges of corporate misconduct and unlawful data collection, the courtroom erupted in a mix of shock and relief. Linda Pruitt maintained her stoic composure, while John Vance offered a quiet nod, as if he had foreseen this outcome all along. Musk, too, watched impassively, aware that the legal battle had turned into a broader commentary on the limitations of existing laws. Outside the courthouse, the fallout was immediate. Media vans swarmed the entrance, and social media exploded with headlines like "Elon Musk defeats $3.2 million fine, a victory for legal precision," and "Courtroom Showdown. When the law is challenged, truth prevails." Legal analysts debated whether corporations should be punished for exploiting ethical loopholes that, while questionable, remained technically legal. Discussions erupted on whether the law itself needed reform to close those gaps. In the days that followed, legal experts, policymakers, and ordinary citizens alike grappled with the implications of the trial. Panel discussions on national television dissected every moment of the courtroom drama. Some hailed John Vance's performance as a triumph of constitutional rights over judicial overreach, while others debated whether the fine should have been imposed in the first place. Back in his office, John Vance gathered his papers, his measured stride speaking volumes about his quiet confidence. "Today isn't about punishment, it's about progress," he declared to his close legal advisors. Let this trial be a catalyst for reform in both corporate accountability and judicial discretion. His words resonated deeply, as the trial had not only challenged Titan Digital's practices, but had forced a critical reassessment of how judicial power is exercised. The legacy of the Titan Digital trial was set to reverberate far beyond the confines of the courtroom. It raised profound questions. Should companies be held accountable for actions that, while unethical, are legally permissible? Is it the judiciary's role to adapt to modern corporate tactics? Or must the law be reformed through legislative action? And most importantly, how can we ensure that personal biases do not distort the impartiality of justice? As the courthouse doors finally closed behind the departing figures, the nation was left to contemplate the enduring impact of this historic case. A case that had transformed from a seemingly routine corporate dispute into a pivotal moment that challenged the very framework of the legal system. In a world where loopholes often shield unethical behavior, the call for reform had never been louder. The trial had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the truth, articulated with clarity, precision, and quiet determination, could shake the foundations of power. Subscribe for more stories that challenge the boundaries of law, ethics, and corporate power.